Nice guy Eddie back talking weapons. Short video tonight. Want to tell you about a piece that I acquired on a trip in 2011. So we've jumped forward in time a bit because the last piece we talked about was purchased at the beginning of, actually before I was married the first time. And we talked a little bit about that last time. This was actually almost, God, not necessarily towards the end. We were still going to be married for a few years, but it was definitely on the back half of my marriage. About a decade went by in which I did not acquire any pieces at all, which is kind of shocking to look back and think about that, but that is the case. Yeah, it was the tomahawks that I bought on my honeymoon. So we're fast forwarding about 12 years, and what I purchased on a trip, on a cruise, on a Caribbean cruise, Princess Cruises, Western Caribbean was the cruise if you want to take this, and I do highly recommend it. Eastern Caribbean, Western Caribbean, awesome. And one of the ports of call was the Mayan Ruins outside of Cancun, Mexico. And what I purchased was this piece. I'm going to hold this a little bit closer so you can see it. It is a ceremonial dagger. It is actually in an Aztec style. There's a lot of overlap between the Mayan and the Aztec cultures. The Mayan were the civilization that lived in these ruins, but the Aztecs also occupied much of that part of Central America. And there is some overlap. You might recall in 2012 there was the whole Mayan prophecy thing, and so one of the big tourist attractions were these little clay plates that were supposed to represent the Mayan calendar, and in fact what they were selling everybody was the Aztec calendar. And this weapon here is Aztec in nature. Now there's a, I hope you guys can see that because I'm wearing black. I'm actually wearing a shirt. It still fits, barely.
The king's too fat for his armor.
Yeah, I actually wore this shirt on that trip. I might have actually worn this to the Mayan Ruins. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I definitely wore it on the cruise. So what this is essentially a ceremonial dagger. It would be used for well, let's be honest, it would be used for ritualistic sacrifice. The Aztecs were kind of famous for this, and this one in particular is interesting because you've got the handle is essentially a reclined figure holding a bowl, and you could actually, it's like an offering bowl. You could actually put the you almost could put some incense in there and burn it, but I don't recommend that. Before I tell you about the weapon, what's interesting about this is it's an example of a meme that had gone around a few years ago. You might remember it. It talked about how, it was like a Reddit conversation, and it talked about how every culture has their own cultural donut and their own cultural dumpling. It talked about how every culture has some version of fried dough and some version of dough wrapped in, wrapped around something. They might talk about well, dumplings in China versus, say, ravioli in Italy, or for fried dough, it would be like a churro in Mexico, or it could be, any number of a donut or cannoli or something. But there's always basically some version of essentially a donut and a dumpling in every culture. And then somebody followed it up to say that there's also essentially a weapon. And this was one of the things that I learned in Spain, Thailand, Bangkok, all the various places, the American Southwest. All the places I had been. And the way the meme described it is it basically said everyone also makes a sword. And they make it out of whatever you have. If you have metal, you literally make a sword. Otherwise, you use shark teeth or obsidian or whatever you have. And essentially it ends by saying humanity is defined by fried dough and murder sticks. And this is an example of one that is made of obsidian, that blade. And that's why I think about this piece when I see that meme. This blade is made of obsidian. Obsidian is essentially volcanic rock. It has a lot of mechanical properties similar to glass. However, it's a little bit stronger than glass. It is actually a stone after all. But much like glass, you can get a very sharp edge, and it's quite brittle. So plus minus. I'm going to put this down for a moment. Well, actually, no. I'll hold it up. So the blade is formed very similar to how you would form a flint arrowhead or blade if you got a big enough piece. It's essentially knapping. You basically just chip off pieces as you go, and you shape the blade. You form a pretty good edge. This is not super sharp, but there's enough material left on it that if I were really good at knapping, I am very good at napping, but not at obsidian or flint napping. And so I would not attempt to try to put a better edge on this, but it could be done. It actually, when I bought it, it had a much better point on it. You can see there, the point is a little bit chipped. Maybe you can't see that. And that actually happened in my luggage. I mean, I had it wrapped in shirts and pants and stuff, and still, just in moving it around, the tip got chipped off. So it is very brittle, which is why it's more suitable for ceremonial use as a tool than a weapon in combat. And I did touch upon with the tomahawk video last time. I used the word tool and the word weapon kind of interchangeably, and I switched back and forth a couple times. And to clarify, a tool is any object that's designed to help you perform a job. A weapon is a tool, but the job is killing somebody in combat. This probably is closer to tool than weapon, because this would not be used in combat. You wouldn't fight with something like this. This is ceremonial. You know, this is sacrificing virgins to Quetzalcoatl sort of thing. This is not something that you would actually find an Aztec warrior armed with. They might have used obsidian, and they have some pretty brutal weapons that they've designed with obsidian, but this piece would be more purely religious and ceremonial. It would be in the hands of a priest, not a warrior. However, it is, you know, just a really cool piece, and it will always remind me of that part of the world. And again, our tour guide was a descendant of the Maya, and he talked a little bit about the Maya and the Aztec and the indigenous people of that area. And I did mention that we did see a ruin, which was an entire city, including roads and sports arenas and temples. It was amazing. It really was. Great trip. Princess Cruises, Western Caribbean, if you get down there. It's outside of Cancun. Now, these pieces, I talked about napping, flint napping, or obsidian napping, as it were, a very similar process to create the blade. Now, once you've created the blade, it's essentially mounted onto a piece of wood with lashing and whatnot. And the wood is carved into the shape that you want the handle. This one, it was a reclining woman, priestess, I'm not sure, offering with the bowl on her lap. And then the green coloring is a mosaic of ground up stones. This one is primarily green. Sometimes you'll see green with mixes of blues and whites and other colors. The green stone is typically malachite, which is a mineral that is found in copper ore. They also use turquoise, although there's not a lot of blue on this one, so I don't think there's a whole lot of turquoise in here. Also shells, primarily oyster shells, white conch shells, or conch shells, depending on how you say that, and mother of pearl, which they would also grind up in the mix. Now this one, again, I'm going to bring it back in because, you know, I just think it's cool to look at. This one, the stones on it are ground pretty fine. Sometimes you might find them with, the stones almost look more like a tile mosaic. So again, there's a range of style there. And the malachite in this case, or turquoise, mother of pearl, oyster shell, etc., would be attached or would be adhered to the wooden carving underneath by pine pitch glue. Pine pitch glue is essentially just pine pitch and charcoal from the fire that's been mixed together. Pine pitch is similar to sap. If you think about sap from a pine tree, that would be the very liquid stuff that you might find underneath the bark. The pitch is when that liquid kind of solidifies a little bit and you find it more on the outside of the tree. If you mix that with charcoal, you get a glue, and then with that glue you can affix to the handle all the decorations that you want with malachite, turquoise, etc. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about the Mayan dagger, or actually Aztec ceremonial dagger that I brought back from my trip to Cancun. If you are finding these videos interesting, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you soon. Next time, we will be talking about, God, there's another big time jump, and I think we're going to finally get into some more modern replicas and some functional weapons. Hope to see you then. Until then, take care.